All right, welcome to Relay Radio. I'm your host, Derek Dreyer. To my right is today's co-host, Austin Hronik, aka Big Ron. We will be lighting the torch of knowledge to bring you exhilarating insights, expert tips, and inspiring stories.
Immerse yourself in the world of business, entrepreneurship, and life as we pass the baton of knowledge, empowering you to sprint towards greatness. Today's guest will make you swap your side of fries for broccoli. Graduating from Iowa State in 2019 with a degree in dietetics. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Dietetics?
You did, yeah.
She went on to complete her master's degree and now gets to stamp RDN at the end of her name. Starting off in the corporate world, she worked for Midwest grocery giant Hy-Vee, and a couple years later, she transitioned into being an entrepreneur, starting Simply Healthy LLC. Dog mom, mocktail enthusiast, adventure seeker, grocery haul queen, she is Taylor Grasso.
That's a pretty good description.
Is it a good intro?
That was a good intro, yeah. That covers all the bases right there.
We do some pretty good
That's what
intros
I do.
here. So let me explain to you the structure of our podcast. So it's kind of set up, think of a relay, right? Yep. So we go through a warm-up. The warm-up is going to be some trivia questions we're going to fire off at you, get your brain going a little bit.
Okay.
Get you thinking.
And then we'll go into different legs. So the first leg of the podcast, we'll talk about your personal life. Second leg, we will talk about social media. Third, business. And then fourth, we'll talk about like retrospect, goals, things like that. So,
Cool.
Or any advice, things like that. And then we'll cross the finish line.
Sounds good to me.
You ready to go?
I'm ready to go. I'm nervous about these trivia questions. I'm not good at them yet.
Everybody is. Everybody always. And Austin actually makes them really hard. He's like,
Austin, I'm not going to know a
I
single
guess
one.
I tailor them to the guests, so
Yeah.
there's
Is
a
it
lot
like
of Iowa questions.
yeah.
Oh, I was thinking nutrition questions.
You guys, a bunch of Iowans. Is that right?
I know nothing about Iowa history.
All right, let's go. Let's do this. You ready? Okay. What was Iowa's football record this year?
Oh, God. I should know this. How many games do they play? 10 and 4? 10 and 3. 10 and 3.
Who's on the quarter?
What?
Who's on the quarter?
On the quarter? What does that mean?
The quarter. The money. Who is on the quarter?
Oh, George Washington?
What months have 28 days?
February.
What is the state flower of Iowa?
Oh, God, I have no idea.
What are the 4 major U.S. time zones?
West, Central, East, and Mountain.
I think that's it. Are we out of time?
Yeah, out of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you got what?
She got 3 right.
3. Okay.
We'll count West, it's Pacific, but
Oh, I think of it as West Coast time.
all of the months have 28 days.
What?
That's a trick one. We get everybody with that.
I was so adamant that I was right on that one with
Yeah,
February. That was
we
a
get
quick
everybody
answer.
with that because you just hear months and 28 and you just
Yeah.
shoot to February.
February.
What months have 28 days? What month has 28 days? What? Prairie Rose.
I was gonna guess a marigold, but
The bird would have been too easy.
it's a hawk, right?
It's the golden finch. Yeah. What?
I told
I
you
know
I don't know
nothing about
any.
Iowa.
I know nothing about Iowa or their history
boring.
at all. That's why
Yeah,
when you said
it's
it was
too boring.
Iowa questions, I was like, I'm not gonna know a single thing.
I don't even know the Texas state bird.
But you grew up in Iowa.
I did, yeah.
So tell us a little about growing up in Iowa and what it was like for Taylor.
I grew up in West Des Moines, Iowa, so just a little suburb in Iowa. There's not a whole lot going on in Iowa. It's kind of boring, but a good childhood. Enjoyed it. I've known Zach and Austin since Zach's my husband. I've known them since I was 12 years old. I went to Waukee High School, if anyone listens to this and also goes to Waukee. And yeah, I don't know. It was a good time.
Did you play any sports or anything growing up?
Yeah, I played softball and I was horrible. But my parents made me continue playing. I don't really know why. But then in high school, I got into running. And so I did track and cross country. And that was much more of
Nice.
I'm not very good at contact sports. Coordination's not all there. But track and cross country, you just run. You don't need coordination to do that necessarily. Although I did break my elbow on a run, so I guess maybe not.
Steeplechase? You fell up the steeplechase?
No, I did not. I just did where you run in a circle. And it's actually really funny, too, because I should have been a distance runner, but I was a sprinter in track, and then I also ran cross country, which makes no sense. But the sprinters got to stay inside during winter track practice, and the distance people had to go outside during winter track practice. So I refused to go distance, even though my coaches were like, "You suck as a sprinter." And I was like, "I'm aware, but I'm not going outside." So
Just given all the attitude.
yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna do that. So I just was I was a sprinter, and then ran cross country, and then I did my fair share of half and full I did one full 12 half marathons throughout my college career, and then kind of gave up running around COVID. So
Okay.
not fully, but
So is that what kind of got you into health, essentially, is just growing up playing sports, or?
no, actually, kind of the opposite. I had a really horrible relationship with food and exercise, so kind of on the opposite spectrum of like, especially once I got into running, like that's a sport where kind of your physique, especially in a woman's sport, is very talked about, I guess you could say. And so I became very hyper aware of that. And with that, my relationship with food became horrible. I was way over exercising. And so I actually went into dietetics for what I would say is disordered reasons. Came out of dietetics preaching the polar opposite of what I went into it for. So now I'm on like the opposite side of the spectrum with more intuitive eating. But yeah, it really started from more of that like disordered place. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. It's crazy that you go into dietetics with one thing and then you come out as a completely separate thing, like what you were saying.
Well, yeah, but you actually like learn about how the body works. Like that was one of the biggest things. It's like when I actually learned how you metabolize food, how you use energy, how you use nutrition, how you use the different macronutrients and like how they support you in terms of exercise, it's like I'm doing this all wrong. Like there is no wonder that I'm not seeing the progress that I want to see. There's no wonder that I feel like garbage every time I work out. Like I'm not providing my body with nearly enough nutrients and I'm not focusing on the right things, right? Like I was too focused on the aesthetics and I wasn't thinking about the actual performance aspect. So when I shifted that mindset after like actually learning those things, it's like, wow, my body feels incredible when I'm focusing on like the health side of things rather than, oh, I just want to look a certain way or be a certain size.
Yeah.
I definitely think like the school system fails to teach these types of things growing up, and even when I was in college. So I ran track in college, and we had a nutritionist.
Yeah.
And when I met with her, she didn't explain to me what you just said about macronutrients and how it affects your energy and whatnot. She literally just said, write down everything you eat in a day and then come back to me. So I did that. And I went back to her and she literally just said, okay, maybe in the morning, like eat some yogurt and granola here. And like, she just told me like where to eat certain things, but didn't explain why.
Yep.
And I still feel like, because there were times when I would be running, like I feel like I would run out of energy, or like I wouldn't be, or like I would be like not like fueled essentially, right? So, and I would always like wonder, but then after I graduated, I started bodybuilding and started learning about macros and, you know, more calories and whatnot and nutrition. So, and then after learning that, I was like, okay, I need to be carbing up here and like doing this. And I was like, why didn't like, and I went to Texas. This is a D1 school where like, and I'm like, why wasn't she explaining it to me on a deeper level for my performance, right? So, kind of crazy. I mean, I just feel like it's just something that is very like not taught like very well, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's a big gap in not only like colleges, universities, and high schools when it comes to sports, but even in like the nutrition coaching world. Like I think there's a lot out there where it's like, oh, I'm just going to give you macros or a calorie number, but you have no idea why. Like that's what I say to my clients all the time. My goal is to provide you with education so you actually understand nutrition.
Right.
Like what I tell every single one of my clients, my goal is that you don't work with me for a long time, because if you're working with me forever, I'm not teaching you anything. Versus I think a lot of the times when we're just giving out, you know, macro numbers or calorie numbers, it's like, well, why though? Like what is that protein actually doing for me, and when should I be having it throughout the day to enhance my performance? All of these different things, especially when you're working with like more active individuals, it's like you have to really think about it from that approach of like, how am I going to improve my performance by utilizing my nutrition? If you don't even understand the basics of the macronutrients, then it's really hard to do that.
Yeah, I think a lot of these coaches online, they just either gain a following or like start working out, do one bodybuilding show, and then they're like, oh, I can coach, I can do this.
I know what I'm
It's just
doing.
like, no, it's a lot deeper than you think, and you can really mess with somebody's, you know, metabolism, or like you can easily mess somebody's body up.
Yeah. Well, and especially too, like I know you guys are both men, but from a female perspective as well, I think that there's a lot in terms of what we're learning with like female hormones. They're affected so differently than you guys. And so for so many years, it's like women have been exercising and eating the same way that men have. And it's always like, you hear this from people all the time, like, oh, my husband or my boyfriend, like, if they diet for one day, they automatically drop 10 pounds, but I look at a cookie and I gain 10 pounds. Like you hear that from women all the time. And it's like, well, because for however many years, a lot of women have been exercising and eating the same way that men do to quote unquote diet. And it's like our hormone fluctuations are a 28-day cycle. Men are a 24-hour cycle. And that plays into how our bodies should be fueled. And it's very, very different. And I think now we're discovering a lot more of that as we've advanced science and figured those things out. But I think what you're saying is there are a lot of like women, especially out there, men too, but women whose metabolisms have been wrecked because it's like, oh, they've dieted them down to like 1,200 calories.
Yeah.
Metabolic adaptation exists. Your body is going to adjust down, and you're just going to be at a point where like your metabolism's kind of screwed.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
wild. It sucks that like that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not equal.
Yeah.
Right? Is that what you're kind of saying?
No, just that like people kind of take advantage of the situation. You know what I
Gotcha.
mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, especially for someone who is a registered dietitian, you know, like I feel like it makes your job harder essentially, or you know, like you.
Like teaching people this is the right way.
Right. Like
Versus
you're actually doing it from a good cause, whereas some people are just trying to take advantage of the moment, you know, and then it ends up doing more harm than good in the long run.
Well, and kind of what I'm teaching is almost counterintuitive to everything most women have always heard, right?
Right.
Like most of the time you hear eat less and move more, and that's going to equate out to, you know, weight loss or change in aesthetics or whatever it is. But it's like a simple example, if you go and cut out carbohydrates or lessen your carbs, which is what a lot of women do, then your body is not going to be able to utilize all this protein that you're eating for muscle growth, repair, and recovery. So they're like, I'm in the gym 6 or 7 days a week. I'm eating a crap load of protein, like 130, 150 grams of protein, but I'm seeing literally no results. I'm still holding on to like fat in different areas that I don't like, all of these things. And I'm like, well, are you eating carbs? Like, what does your day of eating look like? And it's like, well, no, I was told to cut carbs. And it's like, well, your brain and your body's main source of energy is carbohydrates. If you're not eating those, it's got to get energy from somewhere. So that 150 grams of protein, half of that's being used as energy for you to exercise all this stuff you're doing. And the other half, there's not a sufficient amount to actually help your muscles repair, grow, and recover so that you can actually see that development in the gym. Because all these women, I'm like, you actually need to eat more. And then they look at me like I'm a psychopath. And I'm like, just trust me. If you eat more, it's going to make a big difference for you.
Yeah, it's crazy.
does.
And yeah, it's like going against everything that you hear
Yes.
with fast fad diets and things like that. Also, so I don't think everybody reacts the same to like fats and carbs. Is that true? Because, you know, I've heard some people, it's like they do better with like taking in more fat than more carbs or vice versa. Is that something that you've kind of noticed? Like, is everybody kind of different?
So it kind of depends from a basic metabolic standpoint. The higher intensity the exercise, the more that carbohydrates are going to be utilized. So if your heart rate is higher, carbohydrates are going to be the main source of fuel, because carbs I like to think of as like Amazon Prime. Your body can use them like that. It's really easy and it's really efficient. When it comes to breaking down fat and converting that into energy, that's a really slow process, more like USPS for like a basic comparison. And so when we look at that from a metabolic standpoint, when you're in that lower intensity zone, you're more likely going to be burning more fat. And when you're in that higher intensity zone, you're more likely going to be burning more carbs. However, not everybody's body burns the exact same way. And so like the only way to really, I don't know if diagnose is the right word, but to look into someone's metabolism to that depth, you'd have to do something like a metabolic assessment. So like we go to Lifetime Gym. Can I say gym names on here?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You can
I was
say
like,
whatever
I don't know
you
if I
want.
can like share brands or
There's
not.
no-
You can
Yeah.
cuss, you can
Okay,
do whatever.
Cool. So
You just
we,
dogged USPS. So, you know, like,
I hate
throwing
USPS.
shots.
Sorry, USPS. Please deliver my packages, though. But we go to Lifetime, and so like they do this where it's you wear an oxygen mask and it actually measures like your CO2 and oxygen intake and release. So you're actually able to get a full assessment of what your metabolic breakdown is. So like I did it this year, and I'm a very, very efficient carbohydrate user and a very, very efficient fat user. But it just kind of depends on the person, and a lot of it also depends on like what their current activity level is, genetics. Like there's a lot that kind of plays into that. So to answer your question, yes and no. Like it's really hard to figure that out without doing some sort of like metabolic assessment to really get that. But in terms of like basic physiology, higher intensity, you're going to utilize carbs more. Lower intensity, you're going to utilize fat more.
I've always wondered what the mask thing
Yeah.
Yeah,
was.
that's
Like I've
what it
never
is.
done it, and you know, you see all these like athletes doing it. I was wondering what that test. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's actually really cool to like see your results broken down. Like I was pretty shocked when I saw mine, and then they were like, "You're really efficient," and I was like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah,
I've
done like the body scans where you lay on the table and it literally like a thing goes down
Yeah,
like X-ray.
DEXA.
Yeah,
Wait,
the DEXA.
what?
Yeah, and then it'll literally tell you like the amount of fat and muscle you have like in your right leg, your left
Oh,
leg.
that's
like,
crazy. To see if you're imbalanced anywhere, kind of?
Yeah,
That's
essentially,
crazy.
yeah.
I've only done the ones where you stand on the thing and you hold the arms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those don't work.
No, the DEXA one is probably and that's the more like probably the most accurate for like your body fat percentage too. I
Okay.
think.
DEXA is the most accurate for body fat percentage, and that's a big one for like women too because it measures bone density. So like that's
wow.
another big one when we're looking at like that type of stuff. But DEXA is by far the most accurate when it comes to body fat percentage. InBody has way too. That's what you're talking about, where
Yeah.
you stand and hold it. Those have way too many implications that affect it. Like hydration affects it. The last time you ate affects it. The last time you pooped affects it. Like when I worked in a meal prep company and we used that, it was like the person had to come in at the same time, the same day, every time to make sure they got like the exact same experience. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, a DEXA is by far the most accurate. InBodies are kind of,
That's crazy.
yeah.
So clearly, you are very well versed in the nutrition world, right? So, how did that translate after school and everything? What was your first job? Like, what did you want to do with your degree and your knowledge?
I didn't know, if I'm being totally honest. Like, I knew that I didn't want to work in clinical. So most dietitians will go the clinical route. That's where the most jobs are. The unfortunate thing is that in the dietetics industry, there's really not, like, I think a lot of people go into it for, like, sports nutrition or kind of these other realms that are now more prominent in the nutrition world. But the unfortunate thing is there's not a lot of jobs in those areas. And, like, for example, if you want to work for a collegiate team or an NFL or NBA team, those types of things, one, your schedule's going to blow. And then two, they now even require like an additional certification. So you have to get like a CSSD, Certified Specialist in Sports Dietetics. So like sports was initially what I really wanted to do. And I worked closely with a sports dietitian when I worked at Hy-Vee. So that's a Midwest grocery store. Worked in retail dietetics. Honestly, that was super fun. Like, I got to do a lot of different things. I taught cooking classes. I worked one-on-one with clients. I did like samplings in the store of health-related foods. I did some stuff like for YouTube, for Hy-Vee, videos and different things that were sent out. So it was a good time, but got laid off because of COVID. And so then that's when Zach and I decided to move to Colorado just to experience something new. Briefly worked at a meal prep company out there, and it just wasn't a good fit. Like, what they were doing didn't align with my values. And so then I started working for CU, so University of Colorado Boulder, but I worked at their medical campus, and I taught a lot of cooking classes, wellness programming. And at that time was really when I started to like do my business on the side as well. I've always known that I wanted to run my own business. I just didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in terms of that. So my dad's an entrepreneur. He owns his own business. And so like I've kind of seen his lifestyle shift since going into that. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. And the more that I've gotten into dietetics too, obviously, like when you're first out in a career, you got imposter syndrome through the roof. So I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And as I got more confident, the easier it became to kind of start doing my own thing because I actually felt like I could sell myself. I could talk to people better. I could talk better to people about what I was wanting to do, what I was wanting to change, and those different types of things. So yeah, I think I knew that I wanted to run my own business. I just didn't exactly know how to do it. And honestly, I loved my corporate job in Colorado. Like, I say this to Zach all the time. I don't think if we would have been back to Iowa, I don't know if I would have went full time in my business because I genuinely loved what I did. But that's, where like, I didn't really want to move back to Iowa, but it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise in terms of like the business aspect because that really forced me to go full time for myself.
What was the reason you guys moved back?
Family.
Family?
Yeah, family and cost of living, honestly.
Yeah.
Cost of living out there is atrocious. And
for sure.
We got to the point where we're sick of spending this much money in rent. And like realistically looking at houses, we were like, we can't afford something out here. Like it's just not possible right now. The goal is that we have 2 houses and one's there at some point. But for right now, we'll live in Iowa.
Yeah. At what point did you kind of turn to social media and start looking at that to essentially, I guess, build your own brand, right?
Yeah, so I've been doing like Instagram, I guess, since, like 2017, but I was really off and on with it. Like I was never consistent with it. TikTok was what really took off for me. And I think the difference for me being that I don't consider myself a very aesthetic person. And I know that Instagram now is like not nearly as aesthetic, quote unquote, as it used to be. But I'm sure you guys can remember like 2017, 2018, that's the peak of like influencer bloggers where every picture is perfect, matches on the screen. That's never been my vibe. And so Instagram never really felt like me when I was trying to do it. However, TikTok feels so much more like free flowing. And so when TikTok really took off in 2020, I can remember like talking to Zach about it, and I was like, I could maybe like make videos on nutrition. Like I could maybe do it, but I was always in my head about it. I was like, what are people at home going to say? Like, what are people from my high school going to say? And it's also like, why does that fucking matter?
The imposter syndrome.
Yeah, the imposter syndrome of it all. And so I ended up like, I think it was 2021, like sometime in the summer, I posted one video that was kind of just like a shot in the dark, and it went viral. I mean, viral in the sense of like 500,000 views. It wasn't like millions by any means, but I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And I gained like 10,000 followers in a couple of days, and I was like, oh, should I keep like posting videos? Am I going to keep gaining followers?
Addicted to it.
Yeah, kind of. And so that at the time though was, I'm sure you guys remember when TikTok was more of like trending sounds, and then you made it relate to your niche. So that was kind of where I was at, which obviously at that time, working a full-time job and doing that, it was super easy to create content because it was like, oh, I just film a trending sound and then put some words on it that match my niche. But as TikTok has become something that's more of like people go there to find information, right? More of like a search engine type thing. That's where I've really shifted my content into more of like an educational perspective where I'm actually providing a lot more value, talking to the camera more. I do a lot of long form content, which I think is another reason why I like TikTok so much, because you do have that capability to go up to like 10 minutes, more like a YouTube style rather than just a quick reel or video or picture on Instagram. So
yeah, it's definitely been interesting to see like how TikTok has developed over the few years, right? Because like you said, it seemed like it was only like those trending sounds, people dancing, being dumb, and then now it's like you said, it's turned into a search engine and like a little bit more informative content, and then now they're even implementing like shop,
TikTok
right?
shop,
And we've seen people like booming on that, and like they're really like changing how people shop and like how they're integrating their social life with shopping. It's really cool to see. How have you do you have plans on implementing anything like that into your business, like on TikTok shop or?
So I work with brands primarily. So like brand deals is kind of more of how I make money with social media right now, but there's quite a few brands that are starting to expand into TikTok shop. And so I think in the new year, there's probably going to be a lot more requests for that type of stuff. So yes and no. It's something that I run into with TikTok that makes me nervous, like this is actually why I'm going to start working with a business coach to kind of build my confidence in this, is like the selling aspect of TikTok. I really struggle with that component. I love providing value. I love providing education, but for some reason, like selling doesn't feel supernatural to me. So even when it comes to like sharing brands, the thing that I like though about TikTok shop is like you don't have to make the post a salesy post, right? Like I could literally just mention like Chomps is a brand I work with and I love them. And so like they just got into TikTok shop, and in the new year, my brand deals are going to include like a TikTok shop link. And so it's like those things are super easy to integrate versus like there are some people on TikTok shop who it's like every single video is just a sales video, which I get, but I like to do a good balance of those two things. So like yes and no, I'm trying to build my confidence in that sales side of thing, but also I think that we're going to see a lot more of that with just brands in general come 2024 or 2025 and onward. Yeah,
I really think it's going to be a huge shift to like you're just going to see it everywhere. It's been great. We met with oh gosh, my mic just fell. We met with a guy who does supplements on TikTok shop, and they're like the number one shop that is sells. I don't know.
I think they're number 2 behind Rise.
Oh, number 2 in just like
Rise.
all of TikTok shop, like their volume.
That's
and
crazy.
The way they've been doing it is it's kind of just cool to watch. And I say, cause like you talked about that Instagram boom, like there was like that boom of like, especially in the fitness world, it's like the boom of all these brands and like all these fitness people coming up, and it was kind of like the birth of the influencer in a way. And then it's cool to see that it's kind of like changing and shifting now to TikTok, and then with what they're doing with the shop and everything, and it's like there's this whole new wave of like influence and companies, and it's kind of cool to see. So I don't really go on TikTok that much. I maybe have posted one video. So, but I've been telling Austin, I was like, man, maybe we need to start posting a little more on
Yeah,
TikTok.
we post a little bit, but we got to be more consistent on that.
Yeah, it seems to be kind of like the wave right now.
Yeah, and TikTok too, it's based a lot on consistency because that's something that I always like. That's one thing that I talked to Zach about, that there's pros and cons to being an entrepreneur, right? There's pros and cons to being an influencer. Like, I obviously make my own schedule. I make money from doing social media. So, like, I can't complain about that. But at the same time, it's like, it's never off.
Yeah.
Because, like, the second you take, you know, a 4-day vacation and you don't post videos for 4 days, your algorithm is kind of screwed for at least a week. Which, granted, that's not going to, like, necessarily completely impede your social media business. But then it's like you're pumping out content after that 4 days off because you're trying to get that algorithm to pick back up on you. And that's kind of something that I've run into where it's like it's really easy to burn out in that way too with social media if you're wanting to be super consistent with it, because you got to be making content all the time.
Yeah, I went through a phase where I was making reels.
Yeah.
Probably remember.
With the Reels bonuses.
Yeah, when they did
Oh,
the Reels
yeah.
bonuses, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this. So I went ham. I was posting every day, and like
He had a lot that went viral.
I had a lot that
Yeah.
went like over
Millions.
millions. Yeah,
That's
like,
awesome.
And I don't know. I just stopped.
Yeah.
I got burned out, and
Yep.
well, they turned off the Reels bonus, or they made it like impossible to like get paid
hit the
from.
bonus,
and
yeah.
like I was just like, I'm wasting my time just to make like $100. I don't want it.
Yeah,
And I was having
TikTok.
fun with it, but then once I started like focusing more on like doing it for money
Yeah.
instead of just having fun, is when I got burnt out, and I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
But then also like I would always so my reels were like making fun of my wife, or like
Yeah.
you know, like, so the ones that went viral were always that. And when they would go viral, people would just say like the most disrespectful stuff.
Oh,
like,
dude, it's
and I was just
horrible.
like I'm just having fun, and you're like you're
Yeah.
saying these very disrespectful things, and I was just like I didn't like that. I don't like that side of social media.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how it's hard.
So that's kind of like I was like, man, fuck these people. I'm not gonna post. Like I was like, I don't need this. So
yeah.
maybe one day I'll start posting.
You should
again,
start back
or
up. Those were great.
Start it back up on
Yeah.
TikTok. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, and TikTok's got the creativity program beta
Mm-hmm.
is what it's called. So you make money off of videos that are a minute or longer. You have to have like 10,000 followers. The video has to be over a minute. And I think there has to be at least a 10-second watch time to count for a qualified view. You're not really paid that much. Like, I think I'm
Mm-hmm.
paid like $1.09 per view, but it's like, it's still sometimes a couple grand
Yeah.
a month, which is not
That's
a bad,
crazy.
yeah,
That's
not
still
a bad thing.
that's I mean
Especially if you have one video that just kind of like pops off. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
it's-
like one a month.
Yeah.
You just need one a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we just had we post on one of our business accounts, and like we don't post that often, but one of them just shot up to like what 50,000 views just overnight.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just like you said, once the algorithm kind of picks up one, it just like shoots up. It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy.
It's awesome.
So, you're starting a business, or you started a business, a nutrition coaching business.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit more about that. Like, what was the reason that you kind of shifted from your corporate job and everything like that, and just decided to go into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that I really didn't want to go into clinical with dietetics is because it didn't sit right with me that like I would walk into a patient room, hand them a handout, and never see them again. It's like, how am I helping them? And that's the reason, like, once I got out of kind of the disordered reasons behind dietetics, it's like, that's the reason I went into this, is to help people and make a difference. And like, I wasn't doing that in a clinical setting whatsoever. And I really wasn't doing it a whole lot in the corporate setting. Like I said, I loved what I was doing in terms of my job in Colorado. So I was teaching cooking classes, doing wellness programming, a lot of public speaking, really.
What kind of cooking class? Like what are some
Yeah,
recipes?
yeah.
What
dude.
are you teaching?
We would make the most fun stuff. So like, we worked in a lower socioeconomic status area. So our goal was global vegetarian, which like I eat meat, but we had to keep it
Disclaimer.
budget friendly.
Yeah, disclaimer.
And so like every single month we would pick a different region of the world, and then we would tweak those recipes to like fit in with that vegetarian and more budget friendly aspect. And then we would turn them into like just these global and like cultural dishes that were so good. I'm trying to think of like some stuff that we would make, but like dumplings we did at one point. We made, you know what country really sucked was Germany. I'm really sorry to
Oh wow!
Germany, but
Yeah,
like
I'm
your
like
food
that's him.
sucked.
like 100% German.
Your guys' food
Yeah.
is not very
Their
good.
food's just
What?
beer.
Dude, I make some bomb schnitzel.
Yeah, the schnitzel's good.
Well, you can't really. So
yeah,
that's
it's
the
not
hard part with
vegetarian at all, yeah.
vegetarian, though. Is like Germany
Like
was so
eggplant
hard to
schnitzel.
come up with stuff. Yeah, I'm blanking on like all of the stuff that we made, but it was just like global cuisine from all over the world. Huh? Oh, that I don't remember what it was called, but it was delicious.
Ethiopian.
So did you post any of these recipes on your social media, or like did you
No.
ever think about, hey, what if I kind of do this on social media?
So I did at one point actually think about teaching cooking classes as kind of part of my business, but it just, nothing really happened with it, if I'm being totally honest, and I kind of just like put it off to the side. I feel like one-on-one coaching is more so something that people are looking for in terms of when they're working with a dietitian. And so I just try to incorporate not necessarily like a cooking class, but I do like that component of learning how to cook, because I think that's part of why people are afraid of eating healthy. It's like people think that you need to eat like how Austin does, plain chicken breast.
Chicken and rice, yeah.
Chicken and rice and
Just
broccoli.
calling me out. Jeez. I put
Thaw
salt on there.
Thaw on your chicken.
Salt.
Taking your chicken breast and putting it outside to thaw it.
Yeah.
Psycho behavior.
So
Goat moves.
kind of interesting though, like whenever you think of like a registered dietitian, you don't really think of like the culinary aspect. Is that something that they actually do teach? Like, do you take like culinary classes?
So you take a food science cooking class. So you kind of learn about like the chemistry behind food. So it's like we would make bread and we would like braise meat, like the most random things. You weren't making like 5-star dishes by any means, but you were learning about the chemistry behind the food and how that functions and how it works. So like yes and no. I think the culinary aspect for me more came from a personal interest. Like there are a lot of dietitians who are also foodies, and I think the dietitians that are foodies tend to know how to cook really well, but there are plenty of dietitians out there who have no idea how to cook. So I think it just kind of depends on what your special interests are, like outside of, are you just someone who likes nutrition, or do you like food and nutrition? Like kind of the
Both.
biggest
Yeah.
differentiating factor
I
there.
like both.
Yeah, because
Same.
when Selena and I are at home sometime trying to cook, we'll like go to her page to see if there's like a recipe, because she does some recipes and stuff. Like
Yeah.
the breakfast stuff. Like I think she did your the
sheet pan
eggs.
pancakes?
Yeah, or
Yeah.
the pancakes. Yeah. Just little. She
They're
does
good?
a lot of like little tips. Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
Ashley will do that too. She'll make like little egg cups for breakfast. Like
Yeah.
you cook it in the muffin,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, the
muffin
muffin
eggs,
tin,
and then
yeah.
like you mix in a bunch of stuff. Like
My
they're macro friendly.
My hyperfixation one has been what Austin's talking about. So it's sheet pan pancakes. So you make like the Kodiak cake pancake mix, and then put a parchment piece of paper on like a baking sheet, dump the batter on there,
just
throw
fucking
some fruit on there, and then pop it in the oven. You bake it, and then you've got pancakes for the week.
Dude, yeah. So easy.
Yeah.
Gotta try that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
and
just
then you
so
just,
easy.
And everybody's always like, "How do you reheat it?" And I'm like, "The toaster,
Yeah.
the microwave.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
what
it's
do you
either
mean?"
microwave or
How do you
toaster, yeah.
how do you reheat all your food?
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
I'm
what?
like, what do you? They're like, isn't it soggy? And I'm like, well, I mean, do you want the prep and the convenience, or do you want do you have time to make fresh pancakes?
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what to tell you.
Yeah, that's with meal prepping. There's always going to be something, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, we went off on a tangent. I cut you off whenever you're talking about your transition into entrepreneurship
Yeah.
from your corporate job. So yeah, let's get back to that.
Yeah, so like I said, it kind of came from that desire to really help people. Like I think I primarily work with women, so like a big driving factor for me was what I dealt with I was technically diagnosed with orthorexia, so it's an eating disorder where you're obsessed with clean eating, and a lot of times over-exercise is in cohesion with that as well. And so for me, I was like, I don't want this to happen to other women. I don't like hearing about people, you hear it all the time from women like, oh, I'm on XYZ diet, I'm being bad today, I can't eat this. Like all of these things where it's like we just constantly degrade our nutrition choices, our bodies, all of this stuff. And so that was something that I really wanted to put a stop to. Another thing that was really big for me was I think this whole holistic nutrition thing can be a good and bad thing. Like I think there's good components to it to care about what you're putting into your body, but being obsessed with it is a problem. And I think there's a lot of people who make nutrition seem inaccessible, right? Like you have to buy these super expensive, clean, quote unquote, products in order
Organic,
to be,
yeah.
in order to be a healthy person. And it's like, I want people to understand that you can eat what you want and love food and be a foodie, but then also still reach your nutrition goals. So that was kind of a driving force behind like the premise of my coaching business. And like something that I always say too, I think where some of my confidence in sales or my non-confidence in sales lies is the fact that like I'm not selling anything sexy. Like I'm not selling a quick fix. I'm not selling Ozempic. Like I tell all of my clients, I'm not promising you I'm not promising you weight loss. Like that's not going to be my main focus. And so I think that's something that was like a really big thing to me was I wanted to create a culture of like actual education around nutrition. I want people to understand it and be able to go off and like do these things on their own in a very approachable, sustainable, and accessible way. And so that was kind of the driving force behind starting that one-on-one coaching business was I wanted to help women do what I had kind of done, I guess, in terms of like recovery and healing my relationship with food and actually understanding like nutrition is not as complicated as we've made it out to be. It's more of a matter of figuring out how to balance it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a lot of misinformation out there too.
So much. It's horrible.
Have you found though, even though your focus is not weight loss related, that a lot of the clients that you've helped, that's essentially an end result?
It kind of depends on the person. I always tell my clients that like I'm not inherently against weight loss. I believe in weight loss autonomy or weight autonomy, which basically just means you have the choice for that desire. Like if you have a desire to lose weight, I'm not going to tell you that that's not okay. My main focus is that I think we focus too much on weight loss and external validation. So like what's giving us the will to keep going with exercise, nutrition, whatever it may be, the number on the scale, the change in our pant size, the like, you know, all of those typical indicators of like, oh, my health and fitness journey is working. But when do you see people give up? It's when they plateau out, right? It's when it stops working, when you stop getting that external validation. So what I try to do is say, our main focus is not going to be weight loss. It's going to be what health-related habits in terms of nutrition, fitness, sleep, hydration, what do I need to improve on in those areas? Will weight loss potentially come with those things as we improve on them? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah. But the goal is that you start to feel better, not necessarily that you lose weight. Because I think where we have this misconception is like, oh, weight loss solves everything. Like if I lose weight, my life's going to be better. But it's like a lot of the times it's really hard to stay motivated when all of a sudden all of that external validation falls away. But if you start focusing on these health-related habits, you're going to feel better, and that's going to provide that internal motivation to keep doing these things in a sustainable way, rather than just that like, oh, the scale stopped moving, so I'm done.
Yeah. So your main focus is just to improve your overall life.
Yeah. Yep. Overall health-related habits. Yep.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah, which is crazy because I know last time we were in Iowa, we talked and like I just started eating more and like I've pretty much cut out caffeine, like because I had to use caffeine to get through my day, but it was because I was under eating. So I've added like 2 to 3 extra meals and like I can get through my whole day without having any caffeine, which is crazy.
Yeah, I've been pretty bad lately about my eating. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, we'll go to the gym and he'll just pop like a protein shake. I'm like, are you gonna eat anything? He's like, no.
I usually eat after. I'll drink a protein shake before and then I'll eat something after sometimes.
But it's small.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think
when I get home, I eat a lot when I get home though. So it's I don't know.
I think too with nutrition, like I said, a lot of people feel like in a lot of, you know, you see this in the nutrition and fitness coaching world a lot too. It's like when you start working with a coach or you start working with someone, it's like you almost flip your life upside down. It's like, oh, I'm working out 0 days a week. Now all of a sudden this challenge has me working out 6 days a week, or I'm eating super clean. And before I was eating McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it's like, that's not going to be sustainable long term. Like you might do it for the 6-week challenge, but the second that's over, they're going to be like, I'm done with this. Like it was too much. It was too overwhelming. Like I didn't feel good doing it. So like the approach that I like to take with my clients is, what does your life currently look like right now? When we're done working together, what differences do you want to see or feel in your life? And then where can we meet in the middle to make what you're doing now and where you want to be actually fit with each other? Because if it doesn't fit into your current lifestyle, you're not going to do it. Like
Yeah, it's true.
and you're not going to do it for the long term either.
Yeah.
Like it's just going to be another quick fix that you do for 6 weeks. And like, yeah, maybe you lose the weight for the wedding or an event or whatever it is, but then you're right back to, you know, that, and those constant weight fluctuations aren't good for our metabolism either. That's what I preach often is intuitive eating. And so it's like there's so much research on weight stability with intuitive eating. It's like you kind of just coast in the same weight because you're tuned into your body. You actually understand what your body needs, like all of those different things, and you don't feel deprived. So you're not in this constant like restrict, binge, guilt cycle that a lot of people go through.
I think I'm an intuitive eater.
Yeah. Just kind of like.
Yeah. I mean, I've been the same weight for like 4 years. So.
Yeah. I mean, I only weigh myself once a year at the doctor for my physical, but it's been the same.
I don't know what's wrong with me.
My muscle mass has fluctuated, but my weight has stayed the same.
Yeah. There's a lot of health things that I don't understand. And probably my $30 Amazon scale doesn't help either.
Yeah. Stop weighing yourself.
It tells me I'm a 4% body fat every morning.
No, your scale cannot tell you your body fat. That is the dumbest thing.
Wait, it's not right?
No.
I'm not 4%?
No.
No, I know. It's so stupid.
If you were 4%, bro, you'd be like your veins, your
I'd
legs,
be very vascular.
You'd be shredded.
We gotta get you a DEXA scan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think probably like 8, 7 or 8 is probably like I don't know what, I mean, you can probably chime in on what 10. Like a healthy body fat percent or like a average body fat percentage for a healthy male. Once I said average, I was like American average is probably like 30 or 40, but like someone like Austin, probably 7 or 8, I would say.
I mean, yeah, I would say anywhere between like 8 and 15% is pretty good for a
good
male.
range.
Women tend to be higher because we're supposed to carry more fat because we're meant to bear
Yeah.
children at some point in our lives, even if we choose not to. So our body's automatically going to carry more fat. So women,
Yeah.
I would say it's average more of like, I like to see women 18 to like 24, 25-ish because that's usually, sometimes when you dip below that 18% mark, that's where then we can lose like a menstrual cycle, those types of things. And that's a point where you're not metabolically healthy anymore. So
So when like if someone was to go to one of these online coaches and they had them cut calories, when they cut calories and do the gym thing, like you were saying, like 6 to 7 days a week,
Yeah.
does your body go into like a shock and almost kind of like shut down nutritional wise?
Not necessarily. I just think it's more of like a mental shock for a lot of people. Like when you transition into those types of things, like it's going to be something that feels very overwhelming. And also you think about that, like if you're someone who's working out 0 to 2 times a week and now all of a sudden you've got like a 6 time per week program, your body's going to hurt like hell.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to feel good. And it's like, why would I want to keep doing this when I feel like garbage? Like it's because your body's not used to it. Like that slow progression and that slow integration of working out where it's like, what I do with my clients, like, oh, you're working out 1 time a week right now. What can we do to get it up to 3? Like, and what feels realistic for you? Is that like a 20-minute workout or is that an hour workout? Like, what does that look like for you? Because I think too, what I see in a lot of people is we do this like paralysis by analysis. We want to do it perfect. And if it's not perfect, why do it? Like, if I don't have an hour to work out, I'm not going to go to the gym. But it's like, if you have 20 minutes, I'd rather you do 20 minutes than do 0 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of like switching that mindset in people where it's like, you don't have to do it perfect. And you don't have to do it all or nothing. What can you do realistically? Because regardless, doing something is going to improve your health comparative to doing nothing.
Yeah, like you don't have to kill yourself as many reps as possible every day in the gym.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
you know.
Okay, so then this is super viral and popular right now. What do you think of 75 hard?
I hate 75 hard.
I just see a lot of people doing that right now.
Yeah,
too,
that's
Okay.
just a super popular thing.
I don't want to say that I hate 75 hard. I think there are some decent implications with 75 hard, but I think it's another one of those gimmicky challenges where it's like you do it for 75 days and then realistically how many of those habits are you going to keep up with after the 75 days, right? So I have seen some more of like 75 soft. So it's like you implement some of these things,
Yeah.
which I think is really good, but also like 2 workouts a day for 75 days straight. The thing that boggles
think
my
I could do
mind
that.
is like people don't realize that they think that when you're in the gym is when you make muscle. It's like, no, your muscle is growing, developing, and repairing when you're resting and when you're eating. And so like if you're not taking rest days, you are doing yourself a disservice when it comes to building muscle because what you do when you work out is you create tears in your muscle. You're not growing your muscle. And I mean, theoretically you are, right? Because you're lifting the weights. But what's happening in the gym is you're causing these teeny tiny microscopic tears in that muscle tissue. And in order for that to, I don't know how to say this word right, hypertrophy. How do you,
Hypertrophy.
hypertrophy. I can't say that
Hypertrophy,
word.
yeah.
In order for your muscles to do that,
It's hypertrophy. So I've just been
Hypertrophy.
just breaking it up in 2 words.
yeah, but that's not how you're supposed to say it. Zach always makes fun of me. But in order for your muscle to do that, you have to repair that tissue, and that comes from eating because protein breaks down into what's called amino acids. Amino acids kind of work like Legos. It goes in and makes those tears repair itself, come back together, and then that's what actually helps that muscle to expand and grow. And so I think, yeah, people do themselves a disservice by not taking rest days. And so, like, that's one thing I don't like about 75 hard. It's like, 2 45-minute workouts every day, and, like, 1 has to be outside. Also, like, you live in the Midwest in January? Hell no, I'm not going outside.
I feel like that's like almost like you're asking to get hurt in a way.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
well, especially if you're like older, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I get it, when you're young, but yeah, 2 workouts a day for 75 days does not sound.
Dude,
fun
we
to
can
me.
barely get into a week.
I know. I'm still sore from flag. Cool. So yeah, with your business, you've helped a lot of people. You know, you have a very educational approach. But you're also looking to start another business.
I am.
You don't have to talk about it. I'm not going to say what it is unless you want to. But
Well, I'll talk about it all day if you
kind
want
of-
me to.
So
Pumped
tell us
about
a little
that.
bit about your new venture, the idea behind it, and if you don't have to say what it is if you don't, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm fine
Yeah.
to say what it is. I think we're at a point where like it's gonna happen. We're
Yeah.
gonna have it. So
Okay.
it's called Peche. It's a canned adaptogenic mocktail. So my husband, Zach, and I decided to go what we call sober curious around 2 years ago. So what that really means is you're just kind of exploring your relationship with alcohol. Neither of us had a poor relationship with alcohol by any means, but the older we got, we just continued to realize like it was not serving a purpose in either of our lives. And I say this all the time. I'm like, honestly, I was getting a drink to post a picture. Like, I wanted a pretty drink. Like, that's what I wanted. It wasn't the alcohol. I just wanted something to, like, post on my story or something that wasn't water, like something that was fun. But it's, like, the harmful effects of that every single day, or not every day, but, like, waking up from that on a Saturday or a Sunday. And especially, too, once we got into corporate America, it's like you have 2 days to do your own life, really. Like, have fun, do things. And it's like, do I really want to spend my entire Sunday laid up in bed because I'm hungover and not be able to, like, do anything fun on that day? And not be able to, like, actually grow myself as a person, grow my businesses, all of these things. So with that gap in the market, we were like, there's not a lot of mocktail availability in restaurants and bars, and there's also not a lot to gravitate towards at the grocery store. Like, if you go to the store and want an NA beverage, it's usually like an NA beer. I'm a person who doesn't like beer, so it's like I don't want to drink that. But then you're walking around a party with a water, and then you get that question, especially in the Midwest. Everybody's like, "Why aren't you drinking? Like, what's wrong? Like, why aren't you drinking?" And it's like, I simply don't want to. But then it's like you get shit for it. So the goal of Peche is to decrease both of those things. So to eliminate that stigma around exploring your relationship with alcohol and exploring sobriety and sober curiosity, but then also providing something that actually provides your body with benefit, and it's fun to drink, and it looks cool, and it doesn't just look like you're carrying around a water bottle. So basically what Peche is a canned adaptogenic mocktail that's curated with specific ingredients for the setting in which it's intended for. So as a registered dietitian, I've come up with 3 key ingredients in each one to kind of make you feel a certain way for the setting in which it's intended for. And then those ingredients also hopefully provide your body with a benefit as well. So it's not just like drinking an NA beer or a sugary mocktail that's really doing nothing for you, right? So yeah, that's kind of the business venture, but we're really excited about it. It's something I'm super passionate about because there's nothing there in the market like it.
No, you definitely don't hear a lot about that type of thing, right? And then, like you said, you get like the guilt of like, oh, why aren't you drinking? But yeah, I'm actually not like, I haven't been drinking much alcohol lately as well. You know, when you get older, I feel like when you drink alcohol, you feel so terrible.
Like,
awful. Dude, that next
even
morning
worse.
is terrible.
It's awful.
Like
even just after 3 beers now.
Like when I was in college, you could drink like
you were unstoppable.
A gallon, and just like wake up the next day like good to go.
Oh my God, I can remember going to Iowa City to visit Zach, and I would drink Thursday through Saturday, and I was marathon training at the time. I would get up and do my long run on Sunday like nothing happened. And I'm like, this is insane. And now it's like, if we do drink, like pretty much the select events that we still drink at our weddings, bachelor and bachelorette parties, and like we went to a wedding 2 weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago now, and I had 3 drinks. My stomach hurt so bad the next morning, hangover, felt like garbage in the gym for like 5 days. My face broke out. Like, it's just
crazy. It's just
it's insane.
It is poison,
right? Yeah,
I mean,
it's poison.
Yeah, it's a toxin. Like, that's what it is.
So these mocktails that you guys are creating, like, are they designed to mimic the effect of alcohol? Like, will you still get a buzz in a way, or?
Yeah, so they create what's called the float effect. So it kind of feels like we've tried a couple of competitors who have something similar. The main difference in like what we say the secret sauce is with Peche compared to our competitors is that I've formulated each of them with these adaptogenic mushrooms, nootropics, herbs, vitamins, and minerals to kind of, like I said, mimic that setting in which they're intended for. And so we were explaining this to Austin a little bit ago. It kind of feels like a small sense of euphoria, like you just feel kind of stress level out a little bit. It's kind of in between like tipsy and high, but you don't feel like drunk and you don't feel high. It's just kind of this like nice little level of like, oh, my social anxiety has eased a little bit, which I think is a big thing because that's another thing with like drinking a lot of the time and like choosing a mocktail, right? It's like when you're drinking, a lot of the times you're drinking because of social anxiety or because of social pressure. And so it's like, if we can create something that kind of eases both of those things a little bit, because like the can is a 12-ounce slim, it's bright, it's colorful, it looks like any other seltzer, like you're not going to necessarily know that it's not an alcoholic beverage. And so it eliminates both of those things around like the stigma around not drinking, but then it also still provides that benefit to where you are feeling a little bit of something while you're out drinking. But like, are you going to feel obliterated? No. But you're still going to feel a little bit of something as comparative to just drinking like a soda or a water.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I really like that. It's very interesting. So what if you drink too many of them? What is the effect?
So there is kind of like a limit on them.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, it kind of depends on what we end up doing milligram wise of the, by the way, adaptogenic mushrooms are not psilocybin. So like you're not getting, we're not doing,
not
psych-
gonna-
we're not doing psychedelics
You're
over
not going to
here.
start hallucinating.
Yeah, you're not going to start hallucinating or anything. Like if people are unfamiliar with the term adaptogenic mushroom, a common one that you see in the industry right now is lion's mane. Like that's a pretty popular one, and that's one that will be in our drinks as well. So it usually, depending on the milligram, anywhere from like 3 to 4 beverages, you're just going to get more of an intensified euphoria feeling the more that you drink them, but you're not going to like hallucinate or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's more just kind of, we say, you know, at a certain milligram, probably a good time to just kind of like.
Yeah.
But we wanted to create something too to the effect of like, oh, I can have a couple of these in a night, because like if you're going out drinking, you're going to have a couple White Claws or you're going to have a couple beers, right? So we wanted something where it's like, oh, I don't just one and done. Like I can have a couple of these and feel a little bit of something from it.
Yeah. And then you'll still be able to drive home.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
everything. That's, yeah. I think that's, yeah, you don't see a lot of that. I feel like alcohol is like people are looking to move away from alcohol, especially with, you know, legalization of cannabis and psilocybin in some places, right? So I definitely think there's a shift right now, and there could be a definitely a great gap for you guys to enter the market. So that's really awesome. What did the idea behind the name come from?
So Zach's grandpa is from Sicily, and he says all the time, I don't know if you really know what it means, but he says all the time, if you know liking my peaches, you know shaking my tree. So like Zach's got a tattoo on his arm of
I saw
the
that.
outline of Sicily with a peach in the middle, his just kind of like a tribute to his grandpa. And so Zach had created like an LLC for he was going to maybe do drop shipping at one point. It didn't end up working out. And so he had created an LLC. Pesce is peaches in Italian.
Okay.
So that's kind of where it came from. And as we were sitting down with our other friend who's also involved in this, one day, when we kind of came up with this idea, we were just shooting off random things. And Zach was like, well, I have an LLC named Pesce. And then our friend was like, Pesce? That's freaking cool. Like,
It's a
I
cool
would
name.
drink a
Yeah.
Pesce.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of stuck from
Yeah.
there, I guess. So yeah, it just means peaches in Italian, but that's kind of where it stems from, is Zach's grandpa.
It's not pronounced pesce in Italian. I think it's pesce.
Pesque.
But we're
Pesce
pronounced.
sounds
Pesce sounds cooler,
like that,
so
yeah.
we're running
It's
with
Americanized.
Pesce.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an Americanized Italian.
Yeah, all the
peach.
Italians will be pissed off. But
Yeah, they all
So-
get pissed off. And I have like a couple of followers who are, I think, have like husbands who are native Italian speakers, and Zach calls prosciutto, and they get pissed at me in my comments. They're like, that's not how you say it. I'm like, please don't yell at me. That's how my husband says it. Like, it's not my problem.
So naturally, I'm assuming one of your flavors will be peach.
It is. Yeah,
Okay.
our flagship flavor is peach mango.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, that sounds good. Well, that's awesome. I can't wait to try it. What are some challenges that you guys are facing within the startup process?
How long you have time?
Yeah.
How much time you got?
We're good.
We kind of came up with this idea in March, and so we originally pitched it to my dad, and my dad in the beginning was like, you know, we kind of broke it down, and we're like, oh yeah, we need like 50K to get this thing started. Yeah, joke's on us. We do not. We
Yeah.
need like 500,000, like
Yeah.
$1 million to get this thing really going. And I remember we met with like a lawyer and an accountant, and we were like, oh yeah, it costs 50,000 to get it started, and they were like, I don't think so. And so my dad works in the real estate market, and so I'm sure you guys know that the interest rates are not in the favor of the real estate market right now. And so he ended up just not like, his deals didn't flow the way he thought they were going to this year. So he kind of like pulled out a little bit on the investment. And so that has really challenged us to like, we've got to get stuff going with investors overall. Honestly, our biggest hurdle has been these financial projections. Like when you're doing a startup, you think like, oh, okay, we'll just, you know, we need packing and shipping and like the product itself. And like, that's really it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's all you need. It's like, no, you need a lot more of that. And so, or a lot more than that. And neither of us have a background in finance. Like
Yeah.
I'm a dietitian, Zach works in insurance. So it's like, we didn't really have anybody to help us work through a lot of that financial component. So I feel like that's been one of our biggest hurdles. And then another thing that like as we're starting to explore and research investment firms and potentially working with angel investors is a lot of the like big investments right now are coming in like the tech industry. And so like finding a company or an investing agency that's willing to invest in like a food and beverage or a CPG good is a little bit different as comparative to like this tech industry. And so we've leaned into so many different resources, and I feel like we're starting to finally get traction. But honestly, it's just been to get the damn thing formulated. Like that's kind of the biggest hurdle. It's like I just want the can in my hand.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like the financials have really been something that it's like the financials and the investment part is something that I just wasn't expecting to be as hard as they are.
Yeah.
But I don't think you know that until you start, right?
Yeah, for sure. And definitely the formulation and the development of the formula, working with a company to do that, like that adds up as well. Like
$25,000. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you guys had any formulas yet, or you're still kind of waiting for the financials? So have you tasted it any yet?
No, we haven't. So that's what we're kind of working on right now is figuring out these like final formulations in terms of like securing the funding for that. That's kind of our next goal. And then the formulation company that we're working with offers what's called like a hero pack. So essentially you get like a 500 pack of cans to kind of give off into like focus groups, different investors, like those types of things before you actually go into production and start selling it either e-commerce or in stores. So our goal by like early this upcoming year is to really just get it formulated and get that going. In terms of like overall formulation, like we know what we want in the drinks and we've given the formulation company our criteria and they're like, we can meet all of those things. Cause like for me, two of my biggest things when it came to these drinks for formulation was I did a lot of research into the adaptogenic market, and for you to actually feel something, you need the fruit and flower extract of the mushroom. And so that was a big thing with formulation companies. I was like, if you don't have access to the fruit and flower extracts of these mushrooms, like we don't want to work with you, essentially. And the second thing for me is that a lot of these companies, like energy drinks and just like mocktail companies in general, use sugar alcohols or different artificial sweeteners, which aren't inherently bad, but we are learning that they do have a negative impact on the gut microbiome. So for me, I want to create one that uses like pure cane sugar or agave or like something else that, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of additional added sugar in here as comparative to 0 grams like you get with an artificial sweetener, but you're still getting kind of like the same effect and you're not negatively impacting that gut microbiome. So like those are two really big things for me working through this formulation process. And then also like the herbs, the nootropics, the neurotransmitters, like we needed to make sure that these companies had access to those as well. So like the formulation in a sense is made up. It's more just I need a chemist to like make it.
Yeah. Are they, so they source all those ingredients, and are those what the adaptive, what was it?
Adaptogenic mushrooms.
Adaptogenic mushrooms, are those hard to source, or have they kind of expressed that?
I think it kind of depends. So I think we're working with a fairly big formulation company. So like right away they were like, oh yeah, like we have access to those types of things. And then the other couple formulation companies we had talked to were in Cali. So it's like, I think the East and West Coast, yes, have like access to those things. I think if we were to go to like more of a Midwest type place, there might not be as much availability with those types of things. So luckily we were able to find somewhere that kind of, one, they have a really good reputation, and two, had access to the ingredients that we want. But that was another thing, a couple of them that we were talking to, it's like, all right, they've got the formulation in-house, but then you've got to go do manufacturing somewhere else. And then there's a loss of quality control. So that was a really big thing with us too, is that this one that we are choosing to work with, they have a formulation and manufacturing in-house. So like everything is always done exactly to what you formulate it to, which is a big deal.
So they'll make it and then they'll can it and label it and then distribute it for you.
They will not distribute it, but they do all the other things.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good thing you know somebody.
Yeah. Good thing we've gotten in on that one.
Cool. So is your plan to kind of start off e-commerce and then move retail, or are you guys going to try to go into retail as quickly as possible? What's your plan for that?
We're going to try to do kind of a both strategy. So we're going to start with a like small number of cans because we feel like we'd rather be sold out than be sitting on inventory, right? So our goal is to kind of target restaurants, bars, and like cafes in the Des Moines area to start, because that's obviously where we're at. and specifically ones that already have like Delta 9 infused cocktails, which is kind of like a cannabis alternative, I guess you could say, or they've got, just a mocktail menu in general, because it's like clearly if they've got this on their menu, then they've got consumers asking for it.
Right.
And the other thing too that we've, talked to a couple of other local business owners in Des Moines, it's like local likes to help local. So if we're able to connect with these like local businesses that are locally owned and they're willing to at least carry our can in their stores, it's like at least word of mouth, it's somewhere.
Yeah.
And now I don't think we're going to get into like Target or Whole Foods in the next year. Like obviously that's a goal down the line, but we plan to start small in B2B and then also sell e-commerce. But the reason that we're not going full e-commerce to start is because a warehouse is expensive as hell. And so Zach and I are probably going to be packing and shipping ourselves to start off with. And it's like, we can only do so much, just the two of us, right? So until we can get another investment, like proving that we can sell this thing, then at that point we can obviously more scale to that warehouse setting. But to start, that's kind of our plan, is to go probably not quite half and half. I would assume we'll sell more e-commerce than we will B2B, just because of the way the world works now. But we do want to do both.
Yeah, I definitely do think retail is the way to go for beverage.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't really go order beverages online.
Yeah.
Unless you're ordering like something from Amazon, right? So I definitely think you guys have a good strategy, like starting local, starting small. Like don't try to overwhelm yourself. Like take it slow and steady, and usually that's how a lot of these brands start. So sounds like you guys have a really great plan. You have a great product. Excited to try it once you guys
Me too.
get it all get it all going. If you had one piece of advice for anybody listening, whether that is in the dietitian world or entrepreneur world, what would you give them?
You got to just do something. I think for the longest time, in terms of like entrepreneurial nutrition, fitness, like whatever it is, I think we put ourselves into like what I said, that paralysis by analysis. And you have to just like take a step forward. You have to do something, and doing something is better than nothing. So like if that's posting one video, like you're doing more than the person who didn't post a video. Or if that's doing one workout, you're doing more than the person who didn't do a workout. Or if that's adding in one vegetable to your plate, you're adding in more vegetables than the person who didn't. And even if that person that you're comparing yourself to is your previous self, right? Like that's another big thing too. So I think that would be, can I add one more piece of advice too?
Sure, go. Whatever, just
There's
whatever
no
your
time
heart
limit.
desires, yeah.
And then my second piece of advice would be something that I've really leaned into in adulthood, and I think kind of goes back to that whole like, oh, I'm nervous to post on social media because of what like people from my high school might say and stuff like that. Lean into people who have the same values, goals, and dreams as you, because those people are going to push you in a way that other people might hold you back. So figure out what relationships to prioritize in your life that are making you a better person, that your battery feels recharged around, because those relationships are the ones that you should be prioritizing, and those are the ones that are going to help you reach the goals that you want to achieve.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of those. Yeah, I had that conversation with Austin probably a few days ago. We were talking about like just it sucks, but sometimes you have to cut off people who just aren't aligned with where you're going in life, or maybe holding you back in some sort of way. So definitely great advice, and I think that's a good place to cross the finish line. So Taylor, thank you so much for joining us on Relay Radio. You definitely displayed how educational you can be in the world of nutrition, right? So
Austin's over here I learned stuff.
Yeah, we went through Nutrition 101.
Yeah, no, definitely, and our goal is to always, if we can educate one person or help one person that's listening to this podcast learn something, then we've hit our goal, right? So thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully you enjoyed it, and
I did.
Yeah, good luck with all your ventures.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Austin didn't say anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, Austin
I'm so
barely
quiet.
spoke.
I know, I'm quiet. I told him that. I was like,
it's all
I'm filling
good.
in for the most talkative person.
So he's going to do the outro
Yeah,
now.
I'll do the outro. Thank you to the listeners at home for tuning in. Together, we will sprint towards a purpose-driven future, celebrating the power of business, entrepreneurship, and the transformative impact it can create.